welcome to App Coders, as this is the channel for the mobile developers to learn and grow. So from today, we are also going to see some of the concepts of the React Native. As we know, the React Native is the technology developed by Facebook. With the help of the React Native, we can develop our native iOS and Android applications. So today we are going to see the difference between the functional and the class components. So these are the main two type of the components are using in the React Native applications. So when we are developing any React Native application, so either we can develop with the help of the class component, or either we can develop with the help of the functional component. But the class components are pretty old, so might be you will see the class components were used in the legacy code base, or either in the older projects, because right now functional components can do everything whatever the class components can do in a much better way. So let's start. What is the major difference between the functional and the class components? The class components require you to extend from the react.component, the react.component which we get from the React library itself, and creates a render function that returns the React element. So render function is required in the class components, but render function doesn't require in the functional components. So functional components are just the plain JavaScript pure function that accept prompt as an argument and returns the React element. So no render function required. It is just a plain JavaScript function which is used to do the proper task, which is or any specific task. Next, it must have the render method return JSX. So there is no render method in the functional component. Next, it also known as the stateful component because they implement logic and state. So the class components are the stateful components because which is inbuilt functionality in the class components, but in the functional component there is no such kind of a state inbuilt, but we can do it, or we can inject state with the help of the hooks, which we are going to see somewhere in our later videos. But right now you can remember classes are the stateful component, but functions are the stateless components. There is no specific predefined state in this, as they simply accept data and display them in some form. They are mainly responsible for rendering the UI. So functional components are mainly responsible just for rendering the UI, but we can inject the states and all. So we will see later on in our upcoming videos. But the next difference is React lifecycle methods can be used inside the class components. For example, component did mount, component did update. These are the specific lifecycle methods which are redirecting from the react.component framework, which is the inbuilt React framework. So whenever we are creating the class components, the class component must extend from this react.component library, and react.component library has this methods, these lifecycle methods. So when we extend the class component from this react.component, so we are getting access to this lifecycle methods as well for the component. But the functional component, there are no such lifecycle methods. So the ref cycle methods cannot be used inside the functional components, although we can reproduce the same kind of a behavior with the help of the hooks, which we are going to see the later on. And the next, in the class components, constructor is used as it needs to store the state, but in the functional component there is no concept of the constructor at all. So these are the major differences between the class component and the functional component. Now we are going to see with the help of a simple demo. I will show you the simple code base of creating the React in the React Native project, how we are going to create the class component and the functional component. So let's jump into the code. So this is just the demo app which I have created to show you the class and the functional components. So in this project, I have created just one screen I named it home screen. This screen is doing nothing and just printing the text home screen component, and with the background color orange color, and whatever we are going to you put inside it, we are just justifying content and the alignment of the text to the center, as we are setting the style here to this component. So when we run the project, so this component appears like this. So home screen component with the background orange color. So like, let's create the two component inside this component folder. I have just created the component folder, but it is blank right now. So let's create a new file, name functional component.js, and in this let's create, like, there are two ways to create the functional component. The first way is we can write with a functional keyword, like this is our first way. We can create it with a function uh, function welcome in a simple way, like with a function keyword. So this is our functional component, and inside this functional component, let's simply return some text. As we have imported view from the React Native. So view is a kind of a React Native component. Like, this is just a simple view. We are using a UI view in the iOS, or even with a in the Android, the similar kind of functionality is there. So this is the view from the React Native, and let's import text also. And inside this, let's write this is our first functional component. And the second way of creating the functional component is with the arrow functions. So this is the much modern way of creating the functional component. So we can create it like this, with a const welcome function 2, let, and with this is the syntax of creating the arrow function. So let's name it, as we have named this component as a welcome function 2, so we can create it as welcome function 1. So inside the arrow function, let's return the same thing. So this is the second way of creating the functional component. So let's use this function component in our home screen. Like, simply we can use it here, but before getting access here, we need to export it from this functional component. As right now we are not exporting anything, so we can export it by just simply writing the export keyword in front of this component, and export keyword also here. So these two components are exported from this component and can be accessed easily in the home screen. So let's, now we can access, like here we named it welcome. Yep, now we can see functional component 1, and we can see now it is imported from this file, like from the within the component folder and within the functional components. So we are now using the functional component here. So now you can see, if we check the simulator, so we can see the functional component, we can use our functional component. So when we save our changes, so our changes get reflected here. So this is our first functional component, so we can see it here. And let's update bit text to just differentiate the both of these functional components. So this is our second way of functional component. So now let's use this welcome function to here. So now in a similar way we can use welcome function to here as well. So now as you can see, this is our second way of the functional component. So these are the two different ways of creating the function components. Now let's create our class component as well. So let's create another file, name class component.js. So the class component always start with the keyword class welcome class, we named it. And as we see in the differences, the class component always extend from the react.component. So let's extend react.component, but we need to import React as well on the top so that we can use this. So import React from React. And as we know from the differences, the render method is must inside the class component. So let's write the render method here, and in this render we can simply return this, like return our JSX code, like in this way, return and view. As we can see, view is imported from the React Native library, and inside this we can write our text also. This is our class component. Yeah, it's correct. So now we need to export this class component as well so that we can use in our home screen. So let's export this from here and use in our home screen. So this is our welcome class, and here is our simulator. This is our class component. So now these are the ways of creating the class or the functional component. As we have seen in the differences, so we can use constructor also in the class components, like this constructor, and by default we can pass some props. Props are basically params which we get from the other components. So simply pass props here, and in the class component we can use the state as well. As we have already seen, seen in the differences, like this is the stateful component, so we can use the state as well. So we can access the state with this dot state, and we can set the default state. Example, I have set the count, which is a kind of a variable, and initialize it with a 0. And another thing, like as we extended the class from the react.component, we can use the lifecycle methods. So simply like these are if I find, like these are the lifecycle methods which is accessible within the class components. So like this component did mount, component did update, component will unmount, these are all the lifecycle methods. So component did mount, I'm using here just for demonstrate, like, and I'm going to change this state value of the count by simply in this way, like set state. We can update the count here, like this is the current value of the count, and this dot state dot count plus 5, and we can access the count here, and let's print the count value inside this text tag. So this dot state dot count. So now we are getting an error here, this dot state, and so props are undefined, so I guess super dot props. Now this is working fine. We need to initialize it properly. So as we can see, we are getting 5 here. So, and like if we update with a 10 and simply save it, so you can see this is working fine. And similarly we can use the state in the functional component with the help of a hooks. I'm just showing you with a little demonstration, like with the help of the hooks. Let's define like here is the count and set count, and we are using use state hook here and initialize it with a value 0. So I will dig into the hooks in our some of the later videos, but this is just a sample video, demo video, so that you have a little bit context, like how we are using our functional components in this way. So, and here, like similarly in the class components we have the component lifecycle methods, but here we can replicate the same behavior with the help of the hooks, like to replicate the behavior of the component did mount like we implemented here. So we have this use effect hook. You in the use effect, like we need to write it in this way. We can update the count value with the help of this set count method. So, and in the use effect method, let's update our current count. So we call the count, and by calling this method we update the count with this set count method, and here we can access the current value. So it's count plus 5, and we need to pass an empty array here. So like, so in this way, like as we have passed the empty array, so this use effect will call only once upon initialization, not always. So let's print the count value here inside this another text tag. So count. So, and let's use this over component inside this instead of the class component. So let's use this, and now you can see this value is updated. This is our second way of the functional component, and we are updating with a 5. And if we change the value to 15, just an example, and save it, so here you can see the state value remains persisted. Now it is getting 20 as we updated the value here in the use effect. So guys, that's it for the today's video. Hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.